Advent Health is honored to partner with the Hope Coalition to sponsor the 2021 Week of Hope. While this year's event is virtual due to the pandemic, the message remains the same. Your life is precious, and it is the sincere prayer of Advent Health that you would feel whole and avoid the dangers of substance abuse. We're grateful to the team at the Hope Coalition for their tireless work in our community to help those impacted by addiction. We're also grateful to all the speakers for this year's event for their willingness and courage to share such powerful testimonials. Please know, our team at Advent Health Hendersonville loves each and every one of you and is committed to keeping you safe. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this very special event.
My name is Jessi, and I'm a graduate of North Henderson. My brother Josh graduated from North a few years after I did. My story starts when I was 5 and my father left our family. This was a constant source of anger, confusion, and discomfort. During the same year my father left, my uncle sexually abused me. My family failed to prosecute him, and the abuse was repeated. Once I started drinking around 16, I was a full-blown alcoholic almost immediately. My body soaked up alcohol like a dry sponge. I subconsciously resorted to drinking to ease my emotional pain, but now I know I was also genetically predisposed to alcoholism. You never know if that first sip or that first pill will deliver you into the hands of a substance use disorder. Also at 16, I fell in love with a guy at school. He was a brilliant and extraordinary person, but he was also one of the most broken. His father abandoned his family when he was 3, the same year his identical twin brother died. His mother was a drug addict, and his stepfather died in a car accident just down the road from North High when we were 17. Like myself, he was filled with pain and had no support, and our lives were trains about to derail. From alcohol, we moved on to pills, cocaine, meth. I took drugs for a while, but alcohol was my constant companion. One day it occurred to me I hadn't had my period for a long time. I was 18 and pregnant, and having the child didn't even seem like an option for 2 heavily addicted teenagers. The alcohol kept my mind hazy enough to get through the experience of an abortion. It was a decision that ate me up from the inside out for the next several years. The guilt dissolved my heart and shredded my life to pieces. I encourage anyone in this situation to find help, consider adoption, and educate themselves about the process before making any decisions. My boyfriend was arrested on drug charges and sent to prison for 9.5 years. In one way, prison saved his life, but it stole it in so many others. I found myself in the unusual and painful situation of loving someone in prison. He was released 8.5 years later, but he never overcame his demons and our relationship was over. It will forever be one of my greatest losses. By age 19, I had lost my home, my job, my car, my health, and my relationships. I crashed my car into a ditch, and the following year I clipped a telephone pole and was charged with a DUI. I was cutting my arms with razor blades in an effort to relieve the pain I was feeling. Cutting felt like a release of internal pressure. It felt like a different kind of pain to focus on, rather than the old familiar pain I lived with. Later I learned that self-injury is a common occurrence among those who have experienced abuse. I was suffering from major depression as well as panic attacks. The first one began after I took a tainted drug. Each time it happened, I was convinced I was dying, and it's a condition I'll have to manage for the rest of my life. Eventually, I made the decision to stop harming myself, and I was able to quit using substances. I slowly learned how to take care of myself, but more importantly, I learned I was worth taking care of. I learned about proper nutrition specific to my body, and the relationship among body chemicals, stomach health, and mental health. I reestablished my connection to God, and I allowed myself to be forgiven, as well as embracing the near impossible task of forgiving myself. I found the right medication to stabilize my depression and anxiety, and I found a counselor I trusted who was helpful to me. I knew exercising was critical not only to my body but to my mind, so I began practicing martial arts. It was there in the karate dojo where I met my talented and kind future husband. We were married on March 3rd. My brother left a voicemail that said he was doing well out in California, but he hated the fact he had to miss our ceremony. He promised to be here in August when we had the celebration. He ended like he always did. I love you, sister. The next day on March 4th, I received the call that Josh had died. My brother had many friends. He was always a defender of the underdog and less fortunate. He was physically and mentally strong with a warm heart. He helped lead a championship football team at North, and he was accepted to college with a football scholarship and was looking into the military, but due to legal troubles over drugs, he ended up having to enter the workforce instead. While I had been able to free myself from childhood trauma, my brother had not. If you don't repair the root of the cause, the wound cannot heal. Some of our greatest pain and disappointment comes from not being asked to help our loved ones in their time of need. Most importantly, Josh never saw his drinking as a problem and he never quit, so his eyes never saw clearly and the ship of his life was never righted. He suffered shoulder and back injuries on the football team which required surgery many years later. After 3 years of failed surgeries, extreme pain, disability, and heavy pain medication, my brother was severely addicted to pain pills. He reached a critical stage with his eyes rolling back into his head. I called the local clinic that was providing him with an overwhelming supply of pills and demanded they stop his prescriptions or he was going to die. They dropped him from the program immediately with no offer of rehabilitation. So Josh holed himself up in his house and painfully detoxed over the next 8 days. In the months after, he began to have full use of his shoulder and rebuild his strength after years of pain and little sleep. He left for a job in California, and after being gone for nearly a year, he evidently wasn't able to stay away from drugs. 4 days after his birthday, my brother got up in the morning before work and decided to try heroin for the first time. With all the years of substance use, his body couldn't take anymore, and he slowly went to sleep. The person he was living with failed to call 911. In an effort to save herself, she found someone to help her drag my brother to the car and drive him to the ER, but by then he was gone. The coroner said Josh only had 1 needle mark on his body. My brother made his final choice that morning, and this time God called him home instead of saving him. No one, including my brother, thinks they're going to be the one that dies. It's one of the many lies drugs make you believe. You don't have to have years of use to end up here. You may swallow 1 pill this evening or mix drugs at the party Friday night and be the one absent from your seat next week. It's Russian roulette with a high rate of illness and mortality. From a biological standpoint, your teenage brains are still developing until your mid-20s. And drugs are chemicals, so any amount of drugs or alcohol can change your brain's chemical development and the pathways it's still creating. Francis Jensen says of the brain, how you treat it now will have a lasting impact on the adult you are going to be. Your teen years are a very fragile and formative stage, yet you feel the most invincible. If your anger is self-destructive, find somewhere else to direct it so it can't hurt you or anyone else. You can choose to contribute positively to this broken world, or you can choose to make it worse. I'd like to tell you about the horrors of an overdose death, and you ask yourself if it's worth risking the emotional destruction you'll leave behind. My stepfather called and said, "You need to come home immediately." I was instantly covered with sweat and shortness of breath, and I asked, "Well, are you and Mom okay?" "Yes." "Granddaddy?" "Yes." "Josh?" "No." "Is he alive?" "No." This conversation replays on a constant loop in my mind. I have no other siblings. I'm an only child now. My brother had always wanted children of his own, while I have not, so my mother will never have grandchildren. His future wife will not be my friend, and his future children will not sit around my Thanksgiving table. I will never be able to erase the howl of my mother's anguish from my ears. I sat at my parents' computer in a muffled cocoon of shock, typing my little brother's obituary. We didn't want to see his body, so we had him cremated in California. I sat next to my mother at the funeral home, coaxing her to just sign the paperwork instead of reading about the oven temperature needed to cremate a human body. My stepfather was a postman, and he chose to deliver my brother on his last ride home. My 6'2" brother came back to us in a 9-pound cardboard box. Despite all of this, I would like to end with some hope. I found my hope in God. God didn't fail me. People with free will had failed me. People are faulty. Those who love you can still fail you, and it is a challenge to learn forgiveness and reconcile such things. I have to look beyond people to find a foundation that will not crumble. I found hope in myself. You can feel hurt and pain without causing it to yourself. It is the nature of this broken world that everyone will suffer at some point in their lives. It's your job to decide how you're going to respond and whether or not you're going to thrive. I decided I wouldn't let bad circumstances dictate my life, but rather allow them to enhance my strength and understanding, and to use the hurt to help someone else. If you think someone you know needs help, try being the person who steps up to do it, because most people will not go outside their comfort zone. Taking the first step towards finding any hope at all can be daunting, and you may not know where to turn. Lower your pride and swallow your fear and just ask for help. If they don't hear you, ask someone else. All through your life, communication is going to be the most important pressure valve to keep your life from imploding. It's uncomfortable and it takes practice. You should also know about the Good Samaritan law. If you're with someone who has overdosed, you can call 911 or administer the overdose reversal drug naloxone. You will not be arrested for underage drinking, being high, or having small amounts of drugs or paraphernalia. Please make that phone call and save a life instead of running away. My brother would be both horrified and incredibly proud of me for speaking about this today. He would also be so very sorry. I wish he was here with me, standing on this side of victory. So please, to those who are suffering, starting down the wrong path or already far down that road, listen to someone who's come out on the other side, or please listen to my brother who did not when we say, you have great value. You can have a healthy and content future. You can be forgiven and you can forgive others. You don't even have to believe that right now, just take it as truth. Find help, don't give up, and go through the motions until one day you believe it too.
Hi, this is Dr. Geiser, and I work with the Hope Coalition. After watching the videos and seeing some of the images from our presenters, you might feel the need to reach out and look for community resources. You can reach out to the Hope Coalition via our Instagram at Hope Coalition HC, or you can reach out to us on our website at elementsofhope.org. Please remember that addiction is 100% preventable and 100% treatable. Thank you.